Hello, everyone. My name is Diego Laredo. I'm with Farmer Veteran Coalition, Digital Marketing Outreach Specialist. I'm joined here by Chisa Brigham, Stephen Carpenter, George Haney, and Miles Caggins, I believe. I'm sorry. And then we're here to talk about the Discrimination Financial Assistance Program, or 22007. Me and Chisa do a quick intro, and then George and Miles will talk about it. And then Steve will go into more detail. Feel free to ask any questions in the Q&A or chat anytime, and we'll answer them as best as we can. But Chisa, go ahead.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you all for joining this webinar concerning the Discrimination Financial Assistance Program. Our goal today is to inform our veterans, along with other individuals who have chosen the field of agriculture and have engaged in the USDA loan process in some way and has experienced some form of discrimination. So Section 2207 of the Inflation Reduction Act directs USDA to provide financial assistance to producers who have experienced discrimination in USDA's farm lending program. This program gives USDA the ability to provide financial assistance for farmers, ranchers, and forest landowners determined to have experienced discrimination in the USDA farm lending program prior to January 1st, 2021. In response to the congressional directive, USDA has established such program, Discrimination Financial Assistance Program. And so our cooperators within this program are present with us today. And so I want to give a quick thank you to you all, Mr. George Haney and Miles with the Windsor Group, and they'll kind of give you a background as they introduce themselves. And then also Mr. Stephen Carpenter with the Farms Legal Action Group. So thank you everyone for joining us. George, if you would start us off.
I'm the program manager for regions 1 and 2 of the program. That is everything east of the Mississippi River, and including Puerto Rico and the Virgin Islands. And we're really excited to be here with our cooperator. They're a great team, and we're very well engaged with them. And they're providing great services. Really appreciate it. We are currently standing up several offices across the Eastern Seaboard. These customer offices will provide technical assistance to our applicant pool, farmers, ranchers, and forest landowners. If you want to come in, they'll also provide it virtually or by phone. So if you go out to the IRA 2207.gov site and do find local assistance, you'll find information about the sites. We'll be posting information regarding how to participate in virtual technical support in the coming week. You'll also find a list of all of our offices that are currently open, and we're working on opening more offices to make sure we have great support for everybody. So from there, I'm going to turn it over to Miles to continue the introduction of our program.
And as we transition to Miles, Diego has a poll that you all, if you would take a few minutes to fill out, a couple seconds to fill out, that way we know who our audience is. It helps with the programming of this information. So thank you.
Yes, thank you for reminding me, Chisa. And Miles, you can go ahead while we do this.
You're muted.
I think I might have messed up your poll. I'm sorry. I was trying to clear it from my pop-up, and I hit end poll. My apologies.
No problem. You can go ahead.
Yep. Okay. Hey everyone. I'm Miles Caggins. Let me minimize this. I'm Miles Caggins with the Windsor Group, and the Windsor Group is part of is an authorized vendor who's been awarded a contract through a fair process to administer the Discrimination and Financial Assistance Program for farmers across the Eastern United States, as George mentioned. I want to let you know some things that will let you know that we are part of you in this fight to ensure that everyone has access to fair lending programs for you all to run your farms, ranches, and forests and other agricultural endeavors. The Windsor Group is veteran owned. It's veteran owned. It's owned by my friend retired U.S. Army Major Deirdre Windsor. I am a veteran. I served for 26 years and retired in January of this year. And I am the son of a veteran who grew up in southern Mississippi. And he is a descendant of people who worked farms in Lawrence County, Mississippi, as well as the kiln, as well as family who were involved in the pine timber industry. My parents live in Southwest Georgia now, where I spent one of my first summer jobs working with Congressman Sanford Bishop, who of course is a big champion for agriculture industry across America, but particularly in Southwest Georgia. So many of the farms down there with peanuts and other Southern Georgia crops. So we come to this personally interested. We're more than just hired guns by the USDA. And I'd like to give you more background on why this program is being facilitated by contractors, those who did not have as much experience in the finance side of the agriculture industry. To resolve this, our elected officials have signed into law Section 2207 of the Inflation Reduction Act, a program to have financial assistance for farmers and ranchers with a aggressive application date. These applications must be in by October 31st. And that's why we're having this outreach call to you today, because this is a time-sensitive matter, and we are needing your help to ensure that that you and other farmers in your network are aware of this program and that you all are also ambassadors for the program, because we really want people to apply. Let me be straight up with you. The application is not so simple, right? We just took this quick flash poll that was popped up, and it took all of us a few seconds to click through there. We wish it were so easy to apply for financial lending programs from USDA. So this is a multi-page application. It will require a lot of research and a good record keeping from the farmers who are applying. But we have established a call center that is open from 8 a.m. Eastern to 8 p.m. Pacific time every day for farmers to call. There are offices that are popping up across the country where people can get in-person assistance, and Windsor Group will also have mobile teams that are going out to places where farmers gather. We would like to get your input too and suggestions on places where you know farmers gather, and we can send field reps out to those locations to do some on-site technical assistance for the applications, or at a minimum, pass out our palm cards and fact sheets so farmers can go home and either apply themselves online if they have the means to do that, or work through the application with our call center. We'll pause there and look forward to the continued discussion.
Thank you for that, Miles. And again, if you have any questions, please feel free to ask them in the chat, Q&A. And if you have any suggestions as well, just like Miles said, if there's a better way that we can reach out to you through, besides webinars or podcasts, if there's radio, any local commercials, if there's any suggestions that you have, please feel free to share that with us. But I get it forward to Stephen. If Miles, you have anything else to say?
I just want to say we have a nascent social media presence on this, and the social media handles are at 22007 apply. So you can go to Instagram and Twitter at 22007 apply. Then as we go through this, I'll also paste in the Facebook link too into the chat.
Diego, is that visual available for the farmers to know which region they need to be contacting or focusing in?
Yes.
And I can also describe it as you're pulling it up if you're going to pull something up.
Okay.
The region I'm representing, Team Windsor Group, and we're Region East. So think of states and territories east of the Mississippi River, from Wisconsin on down to Mississippi and Florida up to Maine, as well as Puerto Rico and Virgin Islands. There's another company that has the Western states. But let me make it clear, all of the field agents, all the people who will be providing technical assistance have been trained in a centralized manner, and there is oversight from USDA. So our staffs have been through multiple hours of training on the application itself, as well as training required by the federal government for protecting personally identifiable information. And there's a national program administrator who will facilitate the staffing and processing of the applications.
So I just want to reiterate, this whole process is free for those individuals who are engaged in the application. There is no lawyer or anything needed for that process, correct?
Absolutely, it's an important point. This is a free application, and our government has provided people, including people in Windsor Group, who I'm affiliated with, to help guide people through applications. We've already seen some of these entrepreneurial-minded, aggressive attorneys popping up sites, trying to encourage farmers to sign up with them to process the application. Some of them are making false promises, suggesting that if you work with a lawyer and apply, you're going to get more money. This is absolutely not necessary. The application itself, I've read through it, does not require it doesn't have any sophisticated legal jargon in there. And there are no court systems involved in this. Farmers, ranchers, forest landowners absolutely do not need an attorney to go through this application process. People can do what they want to do, but we're very mindful and want to reiterate that if there are legal professionals who are swooping in and trying to compel farmers to sign agreements with them, we know that that agreement is not necessary to complete an application and potentially receive the funding that the farmer qualifies for.
And Miles, two quick questions in the Q&A. So one of them is there's 2 locations in Mississippi. Will they have applications available at these locations and at the other locations as well?
Yeah, that's right. At the physical locations where we have offices, we have a few of them in Mississippi. We're opening a couple in Alabama, one in Florida. We've got one coming up soon in Maryland, and we'll continue to pop a few more of these up. There are physical applications, like physical printed touch and feel applications. Additionally, some of our cooperating groups have received applications too, or applications are being mailed to you. So the Farmer Veteran Coalition will receive some box or some other previously agreed to means of distribution for these applications to your constituencies and members. We also have just received approval for what we're calling palm cards, or you could call them leaflets, flyers, handouts, whatever language you want to use. We have those that can be sent digitally from PDFs, and then also those will be printed out at the physical offices. And for our mobile outreach teams, they will carry boxes of these applications and information as well. Another note on the application, it's not a quick process. It's not a quick process. Want to keep it 100 with my fellow veterans here. This application can take up to 4 hours to fill out and complete. And the reason why is there's a lot of information. The farmer needs to be able to pull together information and describe how they may have faced discrimination before. So up to 4 hours. Now, somebody who's very sharp, computer savvy, and has all their documents backed up on their Google Drives or sitting within arm's reach and has a scanner right behind them, they can crank through the application faster than that. But it's a serious endeavor. It's a federally managed program, and we know that the government sometimes requires a lot of paperwork before it can make a decision on yes and no. I mean, heck, yesterday I'm going through the VA claims process, and I was in my compensation and pension exam that was scheduled for 195 minutes. 5.5 hours later, we left because there was a whole lot of paperwork that had to be done. But at the end of it, there will be a fair assessment of my health, just like there would be a fair assessment of the application from the farmers.
And then another question, Miles, who represents the West? The rest
Yeah.
of the West region.
Yeah, the West region, well, we'll drop their contact information in here. I'll put the West region information in here too. I've got to go into the email and grab it and just.
Okay, no problem. Thank you. And then Stephen, I'll go ahead and give you the floor.
Hey there, it's a pleasure to be with everyone. My name is Stephen Carpenter. I work at Farmers Legal Action Group. It's a nonprofit law firm that works on behalf of family farmers. And one of our priorities has always been equal opportunity in agriculture, civil rights for farmers. And so that's our interest in being involved in this. I put my contact information in the chat for email. And also I just put a link to a 4-page guide to this program that we wrote that you could go to right now. We're going to be writing a much longer version here in just a bit. So my hope here today in about 20 minutes is to give a pretty basic summary of what this program is, how it works, how you're able to do an application, etc. So I'm perfectly happy with questions. If you want to do them in the chat, well, I'm happy to stay as long as necessary to make sure we get through questions. As Miles is pointing out, it is a pretty complicated process in some ways, but we're going to start here with the basics and do what we need to do to get everybody familiar with what's up and get kind of a running start. So and with that said, I mean, it's worth emphasizing again, straight off the top, we've got a hard deadline here of October 31st. So you've got to the end of October. That feels like a while, but as Miles was saying, you've got a pretty detailed application, and especially you're going to need to provide some documents, the kind of documents that you may well not have, like right at your fingertips. I surely would not. So it's worth emphasizing you need to get started kind of now. And fortunately, there's help out there. You have the vendors like Miles and his organization. You also have some grassroots farm organizations that are, have a membership that are really committed to making this program work. Their access information is both on the 4-pager that I posted there and also on USDA's website. There's a toll-free number. People are working pretty hard to try to make sure that you can get some information as you go forward. So with that, let's talk about the program. Who's eligible? I mean, if you just had to boil this all the way down, here is the most basic point that we know there has been a lot of discrimination at USDA in the past. Congress has created this program, they're $2.2 billion, whereby if you can show that you experienced discrimination, you're going to be eligible for a payment. So it's not a lawsuit, it's a program, which is important in some of the details, but for now we can leave that aside. So you're going to have an application as any other program would be. So you're not signing up for, as I say, for a lawsuit. So who's eligible? You are eligible under 2 different types of possibilities. The one that almost everyone is going to be that everyone who's going to be able to participate will be, is that you need to have experienced discrimination by USDA folks at their farm loan programs sometime up to January 1st, 2021. So let's break that down for a second. You need to have essentially tried to walk into a U.S. Department of Agriculture office and try to get a farm loan. So let's be clear, USDA does a lot of things. They make payments to farmers, they have conservation programs. We are actually not talking about those programs. We're just talking about loans, where you walk in and you say, I need an operating loan, I'm trying to buy some cattle, or I need help getting inputs for this year, and the bank won't make me a loan. FSA's job is to help folks with that kind of credit in that kind of circumstance. They also make loans to buy land. I mean, there's a pretty wide variety of loans, but if you're a farmer or rancher, you know very well, you've really got to have credit. And FSA's job is to help people with that credit, make loans on good terms, service them well, and provide credit for people that can't get credit otherwise. So it's actually a really great program. It's targeted to folks that are of modest means to help them either make their way through farming or get started. The problem, of course, is that these programs have had a lot of discrimination. So the first, tracking back here, the first big eligibility group are going to be people that can show that they were discriminated against sometime before the beginning of 2023 by FSA, Farm Service Agency at USDA, or its predecessor agency back in the old days, Farmers Home Administration, because there is no start date for this program. So it can go way back. We've got some older folks out there, and they're out perfectly eligible. So we'll talk about kind of what it means to show discrimination here in a second, but I just want to say that's the first big main group. You experience discrimination by FSA in its farm loan programs before 2021. This raises immediately in people's minds a really good question, which is, what about people who have passed away? Is there such a thing as an estate claim? And the answer to that question is almost completely not, except for a very narrow exception, which is the second way that you can be eligible. So our first way, you experience discrimination. The second way is that somebody else experienced discrimination. They got a loan, USDA discriminated against them on that loan, and then that person assigned, to use the legal term, perhaps assigned or essentially transferred that loan to you. So you now hold the loan that originated with somebody who experienced discrimination. You, as the holder of that loan, can file a claim in this case. So really what's happening here is that the program overall does not assist the estate or the heirs of people who've passed away. There is this little narrow exception, and that's the second path to eligibility. So again, you experience discrimination, or you now hold the loan of, say, your father, your mother, your grandfather, who did experience discrimination, and you ended up with that loan. Transfer and assumption, as I say, or an assignment. So if you go through this program, that's the two ways of eligibility. You go through the program, what is possible in terms of a payment? Up to $500,000. Most people who succeed in this program will not get $500,000. It will be much less. This is true, first of all, because there's sort of, they're going to be sort of various steps and levels. It's not going to be an automatic 500,000 or nothing. They're going to try to make a determination and assess how much you lost, how much you were harmed. So the numbers will be different. 500,000 is the cap. That's, again, the top level, and you need to succeed with the application before you get to that. What are what a lawyer would call the bases of discrimination? That is to say, if someone treats you differently, what is it that's actually illegal here? What was the harm? What was the discrimination? And so it's actually a pretty familiar list of the bases of discrimination. So if you were discriminated against on the basis of your race, your gender, your national or the country of national origin, your disability. We had a person in the chat mention disability, already. And if you try to get a loan at FSA and you were treated differently because of your disability, that gives you a basis of discrimination to file a successful claim, a successful application in this process. So in the 4-pager that I posted a link to, you can see the full list there. You will find the list of the basis of discrimination to be a familiar one. It's sort of the basic anti-discrimination law. The second piece of sort of showing discrimination is you need to show that you need to make the case that you were treated differently. And you do that by describing in detail in this application what happened. I mean, you need to tell your story. You need to say exactly what you tried to do. When you look at this application, your jaw is going to drop because there are a lot of questions. Did you farm? What did you farm? How did you farm? Where was the farm? How many acres? What did you grow? What did you raise? You know, you may want to roll your eyes at these questions, but I gotta say they are important. You need, think about it this way. You need to convince somebody who's never going to meet you, that only knows you through this application and the documents that you submit, that your experience is one of discrimination, that you either were or tried to be a farmer. You need to give them details. If you just say, oh, I tried to have a cattle operation, or, oh, I grew vegetables and sold them at a farmer's market, not enough. Think about it. Those details matter. They help create an understanding of exactly what went down. And that is the only way you're going to convince somebody that discrimination took place and that you are eligible for a payment under this program. So there is another aspect of this that I think really needs to be emphasized regarding the application. One is put down the specifics. You know, I hate to say this, but you can almost not say too much. There's a lot of room there. Tell your story. You want to make sure that this person who evaluates these things doesn't sit there and say, oh yeah, I've seen 20 people that said they wanted to raise cattle. You know, what's up? I don't know what's going on here. Is this fraud? Is somebody trying to game the system? Do not let that happen. Tell your story, the details. So the piece of that, and the sort of second big thing I want to emphasize about the application is documents. So when you look at this application, you're going to see that USDA requires you to produce certain documents. You must have them. In fact, that's what USDA calls it, must documents. You cannot skip those. And therefore, some basic things like prove your identity, for example, or in some instances, they're going to ask you for loan records, perhaps. So you got to do all that. But what I want to emphasize is that this kind of a document is perfectly, is a perfect piece of information to help you establish your claim that there was discrimination. So USDA wants to know, were you a farmer? Submit a document that shows that you farmed. That could be a receipt for an expense. It could be, something from the co-op where you sold grain. It could be a tax form. You just want to be able to create a paper trail of documents that shows what you did and what happened to you. And so every little piece that you do makes the case that you're not, I'm just going to say it frankly, that you're not gaming the system, that you really were out there doing this. And so that's true with your USDA experience as well. So if you got a loan and you have a copy of your own old loan agreement, that is really important. It shows you were in there. It shows you got a loan. One piece of this puzzle is that we know if you did deal with USDA, who's for sure has some of those documents? USDA. So one thing you can do is ask USDA for a copy of the records that are about you. So in the 4-pager that I posted a link to, there's an email address. USDA has a process where you can ask for your own records. You have a right to them, but they want you to use this process to make it go more smoothly. I believe it's September 6th is the deadline for asking for those documents. The documents are important, not just the ones that you must have, but the ones that you may have, because they allow you to tell the story and to convince somebody that it holds together. This stuff really did happen. So that's documents and that's specifics. There are just a couple of other things that I wanted to emphasize. A lot of you will have had experience with or know of what we might call USDA discrimination cases. That is to say, lawsuits in the past in which USDA was sued for discrimination. A number of them settled, or they ended up creating a process where you could make an application and get paid. So an important question is, what do these older lawsuits have to do with this program? And so the first answer to that is that whether or not you participated in these older lawsuits, no matter what, you can for sure still file an application in this program. You're not restricted if you did, you're not restricted if you did not. What does it mean that you had a result in that process? If you were able to, in a lawsuit, we would say prevail. You filed a claim and you ended up getting paid. That is perfectly fine along with this program. In fact, my view is that it helps you make the case that the discrimination took place. So my suggestion is, if you have records from these old discrimination cases and you were able to prevail, include that, because what you're saying then is, okay, I'm giving you information so you can conclude that I experienced discrimination. But by the way, other people looked at this too, some time ago, and they already decided that I did. So I'm giving this to you too, so you can reach the same conclusion. Pile on the evidence that this happened. Do not just think, oh, if you just do a little skeleton of an outline, that's enough. So this is an important way in which these older lawsuits can matter. You can use them in your application now as to help you make the case that there was discrimination. Now, if you did get paid in one of the older lawsuits, one thing that will happen is that USDA is going to say, well, you did get some money in the past, so whatever money we would have given you in this program, we're going to reduce it somewhat because you got money in these other cases. Now, we don't really know how this is going to work, but my sense is that they will reduce your money. They won't take it all away. I really don't think they will drop you to zero and make it not worth it to do this program. What I think is they will just slice some of it off, and is to sort of just say, okay, you already got something, we're going to reduce you a bit here. Again, I can't promise this is what they'll do, but there may be people out there who say, well, why bother? I already got paid. They're not going to give me anything else anyway. My suggestion is don't do that. I think that it will be worth it to you if you have a strong application to process it and let's get the money that is available. The other question that comes up about these older cases is, well, what does it mean if I filed a claim but lost? And the answer is basically nothing, because there are many different reasons that you could have not prevailed in the older cases that have nothing to do whether discrimination took place or not. You may have just done a poor application. You may have applied late. There are literally 100 reasons you might not have got a payment in the older cases. Don't let it slow you down. It just doesn't matter. And for that matter, the discrimination will likely, in many cases have taken place after those older cases. So it couldn't possibly matter. So provide all the information, describe all the discrimination that took place. Don't think you'd have to limit it down to just one. Include information from these older cases if you have it. With that said, I wanted to really just sort of wrap up by saying that you have some help out there, and there is good help. You have organizations like Miles that are vendors. You have your grassroots farm organizations that are there, to always support you and to advocate for you. This organization has been right at the center of the discussions, trying to make this program as good as it possibly can be. They're going to be there to assist you to assist veterans. They play an important role. And so you do have some assistance out there. You're not alone. The last thing I wanted to say, and I really don't want to make it, make me sound like a Debbie Downer here, but I've got to tell you that there are people out there that are trying to scam folks. That is to say, they're telling people, oh, I'll promise I'll get you a payment out of this program, but you're going to have to give me money up front. Or I'm a lawyer and I'll get you your payment, but I want a really high percentage of the payment. You get to just choose who you want to help you and how. But I've just got to say, if somebody promises you a payment, they are not, they're either ignorant or they're lying, because nobody really knows whether anyone is going to get paid. And if they're asking for a lot of money, and especially up front, I would be deeply suspicious of them and anything that they're trying to say that they can help you with. There's plenty of help out there in a variety of ways that nobody is going to charge you. So again, everybody's going to make their own decisions, but please don't get caught up in a scam that makes it all seem too easy. So to wrap up, I'll just say, again, I'm at Farmers Legal Action Group. You've got a 4-pager that talks about these and some other issues in the chat. There's a link to it. We're going to be writing a much longer version later, which will provide a lot more details. These farm loan programs are really pretty, in my mind, the best thing that USDA does, because they target people that are a modest size with their operation, trying to help people who are really struggling. The problem is we've had a lot of discrimination. And so here is a way where people who have used this really good program, but faced and experienced discrimination, can receive some payment to help them go forward. So I'm afraid I went a little long. Sorry about that, folks. But happy to answer questions as long as it takes. Back.
As always, solid and super duper. Thank you so much, Stephanie.
Yes, great job, Stephen. Thank you. I want to remind everybody, if you have any questions, you can begin to put them in the chat. I want to open up with a question as we're giving folks time to get their questions in. Feel free to jump in, anybody who can help with this information. The question is, how does applying impact farmers and ranchers engaged in current or even future agreements with USDA? If they apply, what does that look like for them? You're muted, Steve.
You're muted,
Yeah,
Steve.
so the question, if the question is, how does it affect you with a loan that you may have now? The answer is it shouldn't affect it at all. If, one of the things that we worry about here is retaliation. And retaliation, if you participate in this program, is illegal. Please, if you feel like that's happening, please alert people right away. I know that people in DC office of FSA and even in the Secretary of Agriculture's office is aware of a potential problem of retaliation. And I believe that we have their support in making sure that it doesn't happen. Now, I think that might have been what you meant. If you also mean filing a lawsuit against USDA, I think it also likely doesn't matter. I mean, in other words, you're not prohibited from suing USDA if that's the question. If you do a lawsuit against them, the court may say, oh, did you ever get any compensation for this? And you're gonna, if you succeed in this program, you're gonna have to say, yes, I did. So I can't say it wouldn't be a part of a lawsuit, but it's not like some lawsuits where you sign and you promise, you say, okay, this is it. I'm never gonna sue you again for this topic. So that, I hope I somehow in there got to the question at hand.
Thank you, Stephen. We can go ahead and get into chat questions.
I've been responding and as we went.
So awesome.
Okay,
So,
see. Miles, George, you have anything else you want to say?
One of the things that we're exploring now is how to make sure we can do virtual technical assistance for those who choose to have that. So that should be on the website in the next week or two. We're working through the logistics. So you'll always be able to call the National Call Center and be connected to a technical assistance over the phone. But we do know that some people like to have the visual. So we're working through the logistics to be able to do Zoom meetings. So.
Okay, Miles?
Just a little more background on the implementation that Team Windsor is doing. This award process for the contract really happened this spring. So we, as George has mentioned, as he's leading all the on-the-ground operations across the region east, the eastern United States, it's been a pretty quick flash to bang time. So setting up these offices requires finding a space, executing leases with disparate property owners, or finding spaces inside of other facilities that are owned by cooperators or interested partners, as well as staffing up. We are making efforts to staff up locally with members of the agriculture community who know the audience that we're trying to serve, the farmers who we're trying to reach. So continue to follow the website closely, follow on social media. Next week, we'll start having press releases to announce the opening of new offices. And let me be clear, we can't cover all the ground. This is a short-term program where we're prioritizing the person power in areas where there are high density of farmers who face discriminations. But everybody is able to call into the helpline, 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. Those who are able, we encourage people to file the application online also. Thanks.
Miles, if I could jump in, in the chat, there's a question from Danny Bismarck, and I'll just read it. He says, please confirm, is there any language whatsoever in the program that prohibits one from taking further action should one choose to do so? And the answer is, I can confirm there is no language whatsoever of anything like this at all. If the fine print that kind of is there says that you let USDA look at and use records about your experience at USDA, like your loan documents. And so the one thing you're opening yourself up to when you sign all this stuff is you're saying, I want a payment under this program, and USDA is saying, okay, we'll look at it, but we want to be able to look at the records that we have about your loans or other experience at USDA. So that's a right that you're giving them, but that same sort of fine print stuff does not include anything about future action that you would want to take against USDA.
I'll also add on to what Stephen has said, that the program does not preclude a person from applying for any other concurrent or future programs. And because there's a cutoff for the window of discrimination, this had to be discrimination that happened essentially prior to 2021. So if you've opened a farm last week and you want to apply to this program is not for you, you're not eligible. There are other programs that USDA has for you.
Awesome. So I want to confirm again, just the logistics part of it, because we have growers in different age ranges. So if you're looking to apply, you have the option to apply online. You have the option to do a paper copy, hard copy. And then you also, if you choose to apply online, but you need to be able to mail in your application or your confirming documents. That's two separate transactions, correct? Does that make sense, that question? So I apply online, but I don't have a way to submit my credentials or the documents that says that I'm a farmer. How does that happen? Yes, George.
So the objective there would be to copy everything because you do not want to send originals because they will not go back to you, but make copies of your documents and then you'll be provided the address to send them to based on where you are. And we are asking that you send them within 2 days. So that'd be postmarked within 2 days is the
And,
request.
and if you decide that your application isn't what you hoped it would be, you can submit a second one. You have to go through the whole set of hoops again. But as George has pointed out, you can't just, oh, I want to add this. And then 2 weeks later, oh, I want to add that. If you want to do something different, you need to resubmit the whole thing. I wanted to
Right.
quickly address two.
Can I address
questions.
something real quick there, Stephen?
Of course.
The point there is submit. So you can enter all your information and the system will maintain it in the online system. But until you hit submit, you can go back and you can change things and update things all you need. It's when you hit that submit button is when it's final.
So let's look at a couple of questions here or comments. Stephen Walker asked, is this a loan or just a discrimination payment? And the answer is that it is a payment. It is not a loan. It is, not a loan. Matthew Barstow says, feels pretty daunting to have to piece together proof from years ago. And that is correct, which is why I really think the emphasis is on telling your story thoroughly, because you create, sort of a chronology of the things that happen to you, and it becomes more credible the more realistic details you have that hold it together. And I would say also that, I mean, we're going to have to talk the law here for a second. So if you think about it, if you're trying to show that somebody discriminated against you, you're going to have some level of burden of proof. Like, how convincing does it have to be? And and there are different levels of convincing, different levels of burden of proof. So it's important to note that in this program, the burden of proof is what lawyers call substantial evidence. That is a very low burden of proof. What you have to show is that a reasonable person could believe that the discrimination took place. In other words, and the reason this matters for Matthew's point is that you do not need some sort of a smoking gun document. You do not need a tape of somebody using a racial slur. What you need is a set of facts and a credible story. And you can add statements from other people that say, oh yeah, I remember, when he came back and said, dang, I just got told there were no applications, but I saw them give one to somebody else. What's going on? It's fine and good to use those sorts of sworn statements to support your application. Pull out all the stops along that way. And then remember, it's not a super high burden of proof. So the answer, Matthew, is that, yeah, it's hard, but your sort of burden here is not incredibly high. And then one last one here, Laureen says, does USDA have documents from the 70s, 80s? Very interesting question. And it's kind of a confusing answer. I have some familiarity with the way that USDA keeps its documents. A lot of documents get destroyed fairly soon after they're used, but USDA does have an archive system that goes back quite a ways. And so what actually comes out when you request documents, I'm going to be interested to see as well. So I would suggest giving any sort of details that you have when you request these documents. The name that you use, if you farmed as an entity, use that, the years, the location, the county office that you went to, all that will help them retrieve the documents. So I wish I had a better answer on exactly what's going to be available and what will not. I don't, but it's a concern that I have as well. In my view, you have a right to the documents that that are about you. The question is getting them and getting them quickly. And so USDA has been convinced to create this sort of email system whereby you can ask for documents that you have a right to.
So, Stephen, there's a lot of questions about the taxability of this distribution. It is not a grant. It is not a loan. It is a payment. It is a distribution to you. It is taxable.
Yeah, what I would say about that is I would phrase it a slightly different way, and I would say IRS thinks it's taxable. If you think you have some creative argument, go for it. But you will receive what in the tax world is called a 1099 next year, or if your payment is next year, the year after that, that's going to say that you got this payment. IRS is going to consider that taxable, really like any other payment that you would have had that relates to your farm. And that means IRS is going to get it too. So plan for it to be taxable unless you've got some other strategy. But know that the IRS will know you got the payment. So I'm agreeing with you, George. It's like for all practical purposes, taxable, but I wouldn't want to discard, somebody trying something. So
Great
it's
answer.
a payment.
Can you all go into who's making the decisions on the application?
Sure thing. I can do that if you'd like. So there'll be a robust criteria for how the applications will be evaluated, established by the national administrator. The regional hubs, that is Region East and Region West, staff that's there will do the initial analysis and make recommendations based on the criteria that's given to us. And the national organization will review our recommendations, and they will make a determination as to if that recommendation is they agree with, or they may adjust it. And then from there, the entire applicant pool will be awarded based on the number of applications and the criteria.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Have
so
another-
I should mention that everyone that will be doing the reviews has former FSA and loan experience in the industry. So these are people who have backgrounds, not specifically with USDA, but with other organizations and other government agencies and lending. So they're very qualified to do this role.
Yeah, and I would add to that, when Congress created this program, they wanted to create some distance between USDA and the way the program works. So it is a USDA program, and USDA is advising and supervising this process. But they are hiring folks that are not USDA people to do these determinations. And so, it's sort of somewhere in between USDA or not USDA. I mean, in the end, it's USDA's money and they're going to have some authority over it. But they are hiring people that are not a part of the department to do the evaluations. That's really a good question. And, I don't know those folks, and I don't have much to add. I'm curious too. I gotta say.
All right, we've got some more questions, so we're gonna kind of roll through, see if we can get everything answered as we wrap up. Next question, why do they ask about offsets in the application if debt is not included in the program? Won't they take that into account when determining the payment?
So an offset means that you got a loan from USDA. In this case, you got a loan from USDA. You were unable to pay it back. One of the things that USDA will do is offset other payments you might get from USDA to pay this loan. And if things go down the line further, they'll actually do what's known as a treasury offset. And that means that if you get a tax refund, or actually if you get a Social Security payment, they will dock you part of your Social Security payment or your tax refund to pay this old debt. And so the application asks if this ever happened to you. And I can't say for sure why they did it, although, the way that I would use that information if I was making those decisions is if I heard that they were, in a case where there had been discrimination and they're still, collecting money from people in dribs and drabs, out of their Social Security check, that would affect me, and it would affect how much money I thought should go to that applicant. So my guess is that's why they're asking. But yeah, that's for people that got loans, couldn't pay it. And the federal government kind of never forgets that you owe them money.
I want to say thank you all, gentlemen, for your time and your knowledge about this program. Webinar participants, we thank you for joining us today. If you continue to have questions, you can definitely reach out to Farmer Veteran Coalition. We'll get you connected to the organizations that you need to be connected to. Diego, you want to close out?
Yes, thank you, Tysa. And thank you, Stephen, Miles, and George, for all the help. We had a lot of questions. We're on time right now. We will continue to answer these questions afterwards. I can send out emails once we get those questions answered. Please continue to contact us. Wherever we all added our emails in the chat. I'm also adding our website where you find more information along with the link to go to apply for this program, and also just find more resources. Trying to think what else.
October deadline.
Yes. Stephen, Miles, George, any closing thoughts?
I just
Thank
put my
you so
email. You just put my email in the chat again.
Awesome.
Yeah, thanks for the opportunity to reach out to your veterans. We're veterans. I'm a veteran. George is a veteran. Our leader in Region 1 and 2 are veterans, so we're with you on this. Great questions, and as we're growing through this process together, we'd be happy to get back in touch with this group in a month or so as we're learning some lessons learned as the applications are being processed out in the field and online. Thanks.
Okay, Stephen. All right.
Thank you. Pleasure to help out.
Thank you, Stephen. And one last thing, I saw this question often is, do you need a lawyer if a lawyer contacted you? You do not need a lawyer for this. This whole application is free. That's what we're here for, to assist you. If you do want to use a lawyer, then you are free to do so, but it is not required. I just want to emphasize that.
And the financial responsibility for paying for that lawyer falls on the applicant.
Yes. But again, thank you for attending this webinar. We hope it's very helpful. There'll be a post-webinar survey afterwards with some questions. Please answer those. It helps us just to improve and just make sure we're reaching out to everyone as best as we can. If you have any suggestions as well, please share that with us. And thank you. Hope you have a great day. And thanks, Stephen, Miles, George, Jason.